Welcome to Y Nada Más, a Real Madrid podcast.
All right. What is going on, everybody? This is Eric Rivera with the Y Nada Más podcast. And once again, we are here. It's been a couple days, about a week or a week and a half since I last did a podcast. I told you guys I was going to be in New York, so I had to step out I didn't even get a chance to really watch the Real Sociedad game. And then, unfortunately, this weekend, I was going to do a podcast about this weekend's unfortunate, loss to Atlético Madrid, and I will be talking about that today because really, I kind of knew looking at the schedule that, we were going to do well. I mean, not to say that, you have to go, you want to be arrogant, but I really felt like, the team was going to show up, obviously today against Las Palmas, and, it was a team that, it's a team that's struggling in the bottom half of the table. Hasn't really had a chance, hasn't had, a lot of success in front of goal. So, it would be an absolute shambles if we lost, a game against Las Palmas in the Bernabeu, but obviously that didn't happen. So we can really talk about, I think it was a good way for me to jump back onto the podcast, during the week because of the fact that, we had two games, one right after the other. And then there's another very important game coming up this weekend, which is against Girona. Which at this point will establish who's the leader of the league at this point because of the fact that, right now Girona, to the surprise of everybody, is leading the league, playing some very good football there. And, in second place is Real Madrid after Barcelona dropped points yesterday against Mallorca. And now Real Madrid, once again, got points today versus, of course, Unión Deportivo Las Palmas. It's kind of been a little, I knew kind of things were going to change because of that. And then there was a lot of things said after the Atlético Madrid game that I'm pretty sure, you guys have heard of. And, a lot of people have been talking about it. So I'm going to give my opinion on it about a little bit. And obviously talk about today's win. Not too much because I don't think there's a couple things that you can take away from how Ancelotti set up his game today as compared to, how he set it up against Atlético Madrid. And then, of course, you can draw some conclusions from that. And then, of course, there are other things going on. I guess a lot of things said around the team and everything because of what happened with the Atlético Madrid game. But as always, the situation with the situation with Real Madrid, it's funny. Anytime there's a loss, things get blown out of proportions. Now, I, of course, was angry, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I wasn't angry about that loss, and I wasn't angry about some of the things that, obviously, Carlo Ancelotti employed or he did with the lineup. I was, just as perplexed by as many of you. Of course, what the thing is that I don't scream bloody murder every single time there is a change because, this is it's a competitive sport. Other teams are going to come out and play. Atlético Madrid is, we have to say that Atlético Madrid is on paper, looking at La Liga, is one of the toughest teams in La Liga right now. They were coming off a heavy loss as well against Valencia, which, surprised them. And of course, they were going to come out guns blazing. So, there's a lot of different things going on and a lot of, and then, they had unfortunately, not unfortunately, because I don't really care if they lose, but win or lose, but, they also suffered I would say not a humiliating defeat because it wasn't a defeat, but the draw in midweek of last week where they were beating Lazio 1-0 in the Champions League. And then all of a sudden you get scored on in the 94th minute, something they're very, very aware of course. harking back to Lisboa from, 2000, what was it, 2010, when they lost in Lisboa, or, for La Décima, they lost against Real Madrid, of course, with a 94-minute header, or 93-minute header, and essentially that's kind of what happened to them. Again, it was a repeat of that, but in the group stage, of course, against Lazio, and to, dig the knife even deeper, I guess, they got scored on by the goalkeeper, of all people. Heading the ball, Ivan Provedal, who is the goalkeeper of Lazio, steps up and scores a beautiful header, completely uncontested header, in essentially the 94th minute of the game, and ties the game up in the group stage when they were ready to go away with the 3 points. Atlético Madrid was going to walk away with the 3 points, and so that didn't happen. So they were obviously coming off and fired up because of that, because of the Valencia loss. And, we came in, we were coming on a high of a fight, of being undefeated in the league, of having won in Union Berlin. But, of course, there's a lot of talk around whether or not the way we were playing was sustainable, and where it was Jude Bellingham, a 20-year-old, who, yes, is a solid and great player to have on our team. Was he going to be able to continue digging us out of, getting last-minute winners and digging us out of a hole every time that we dig ourselves in the hole? So, well, there are a lot of things to talk about there and give my opinion on. Anyway, so this is, once again, the Nada Mas podcast. You guys can follow me at Nada Mas on X, or formerly known as Twitter, at Nada Mas podcast on X and Twitter. That is where I am most active. You can also follow us at the Nada Mas podcast on YouTube, where you can find the video version of this podcast that you're listening to right now, unless, of course, you're watching it, which, hello. So do me a favor. If you guys are listening to it, please hit the subscribe button. Head over to YouTube and hit the subscribe button at Nada Mas podcast and help me grow this thing. Now, I know I've been sporadic, but my goal is to obviously stay as up to date as possible. But I travel a lot for work, unfortunately. So what happens is sometimes I can either not catch the game or I'm going to be out. But I did, buy some new mics that I can hook up to my phone. So I think I'm going to start doing some little bit more impromptu kind of videos. Not videos. Well, maybe I'll do videos, but they'll be from my phone and then I can edit them after the fact. But I will kind of wanted to ask you guys a question. I mean, obviously, if content is such a big thing, content, the idea of getting the content rapidly, I think some of the things I want to do sometimes, I might name them a little bit differently. But obviously, if you follow and subscribe to the podcast, you're going to be able to see it, update, and see what's going on. So, I'll just mention that maybe I can shoot these very quickly with my mic, wherever I'm at, in the moment, kind of more in the moment, a little bit faster takes. And I can upload those as podcasts. They won't have a video version, or maybe they will, depending if I could shoot from my phone at that moment. But, I can upload them a little bit quicker so you can be able to listen to, content a little bit quicker. And it also allows me to do it and, from places that I won't normally, obviously don't have, my studio set up, when I'm on the move. So I wanted to do that because I want to keep the content coming. I want to keep the content up to date, and I want to have more of a regular flow, but of course something that I can do without disrupting my regular day job and of course my regular my regular life, so anyway, so that I can keep doing things as I'm doing them while I'm away. But anyway, that's kind of what I want to start doing too as well. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for obviously, tuning in and continue to support the podcast for those that you do. I've seen obviously a drop in the listeners, but that's of course because I haven't been as consistent. We had kind of thousands of listeners at one point, and then it dropped to kind of, I would say was thousands, a couple thousand listeners to now a couple hundred listeners. And that was really because, I wasn't staying on the same pace as I used to. So I got to just get back into that and start uploading content because it's something I really do enjoy, but it's something that doesn't pay the bills. So it's not always like, I can continue doing that all the time. But in the efforts of not sounding like a broken record, because I think I do this a lot, just stay tuned as I keep on trying to churn things out and modify content and do things, just keep making things better, hopefully, and that you guys will enjoy it. If you guys have anything you want to, hit me up about, please contact me at Nada Mas Podcast on X, or, formerly known as Twitter, at Nada Mas Podcast on Facebook, at YNM Podcast on Instagram, on the YouTube channel, or hit me up on the official email for our podcast, which is info@inadamas.net. Of course, we have our website, which is inadamas.net. You guys can check out, some articles occasionally that are thrown up there. You can listen to the podcast via the website as well. But anyway, if you want to check us out, that's our space there. If you're going to kind of see a little bit more about who we are, that's where we are at. But make sure, I think the most important thing to me is to, guys, help me out, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and, help us out grow there. Because I think really that's where everything is right now these days. It's either audio or video, and those are the two big things. And that on YNM Podcast on Instagram, I like to post, kind of quick. I've been doing it a little bit more lately, which is I'll do quick writings of like my thoughts. Obviously not like podcasts, going to be a couple paragraphs on what I thought right after the game. So you can see that stuff there at YNM Podcast as well. All right. So to get into the games that happened. So really let's talk about Atlético Madrid. So I was obviously angry. Everybody was angry. It was a terrible, I think it was a bad lineup from the get-go. Somebody commented on the Instagram account that, that they didn't think it was that bad of a lineup, or that we shouldn't fall into this, narrative that, you can't, I guess, I mean, that's not what they said, but I feel like they feel like everyone gets caught up in this narrative of not playing, Kroos and Modric and these guys together. But I think we've already established since a long time ago that you can't play Kroos and Modric together anymore. A couple of reasons why is essentially because, they're getting older. They don't have the speed. And obviously, what they lack in speed, they can make up for in technique. But when you are playing teams like of a higher level, like a Manchester City, you are playing teams that are very, very quick, that are very also physically strong. You are going to need that pace. You are going to need that burst of, I would say, that just unbridled aggression, passion. You're going to need that push that those guys are not going to be able to offer you. And it kind of hurts me a little bit because of the fact that I can't say it enough. I'm a huge Luka Modric fan. Absolutely adore the guy. He is one of my favorite players of all time. I think he's up there as my favorite player of all time. I love everything that Luka Modric does, essentially. But we got to be real. He's up there in age. He's 38 years old. Which obviously by normal standards is not old at all, but by footballing standards is, of course, very up there in age. He's not going to be able to compete physically on the field with some of these younger midfielders that he's going to go up against, especially in the likes of a team like Atlético Madrid, especially on a team like the likes of Manchester City, which we saw, them smash us last year 4-0 in the Champions League. Those type of things are going to, you're going to get to a point where in every player, no matter how great they are, is going to physically deteriorate because, these sports, man, they're a young man's game. They're a young man's game, and it's, I always tie it back to like my fighting days and everything when I was boxing and when I was kickboxing, and, you have UFC fighters, and I'm sure a lot of you guys, I follow a lot of you guys as well on X/Twitter, whatever the fuck it is, a lot of people are UFC, fans, and it's like you see fighters deteriorate as they get older. They're a little bit slower. It takes longer for them to recover. It's easier for them to get knocked out. There's a lot of wear and tear on your body after so many years of doing a grueling sport. And while, football is not a sport where you're going to get knocked out or essentially anything like that. It is a sport where you are playing games, hundreds of games a season, or, not hundreds of games a season, but you're playing hundreds of games throughout your entire career. You are playing week in and week out. You are playing up to 2 times a week, very, very demanding games because you're playing against high-level teams. I don't think sometimes us as fans, we don't take into account that there is, aside from there being a physical factor, there is a mental factor that also affects these players. And when you're mentally exhausted, your body cannot respond to the same way. Even if you're physically fit, if you're mentally exhausted, your body is not going to respond the way you want it to. So there are many things that come into play. And I think what happens is you see a lot of these, freaking clowns on Twitter and clowns all over, and it's not just Madrid fans that can be like that. I feel like, we just, because of the fact that these people make millions of dollars, because these players make millions of dollars, we treat them like, it's kind of like a dance monkey, essentially, like a carnival monkey with the playing the music box. It's basically, the guy plays the music box and the monkey's supposed to dance. And really that's like what we think about with these guys is like, just go out there, play the game, do your job, score the goals, make us happy. And then the minute they complain about something, whether it's, some sort of serious situation they're going through physically or mentally or something, they're just going through a bad patch, we automatically, get angry with them. And then when they complain about it, we're like, why are you complaining? You make millions of dollars, man. And just because somebody makes millions of dollars doesn't take away, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And they make money, but no amount of money is going to stop them from getting injured. No amount of money is going to stop them from getting tired. No amount of money is going to stop them from getting mentally exhausted, just like anybody else would get mentally exhausted, no matter where you are on the spectrum of earnings in your life. Everybody gets physically exhausted or mentally exhausted about anything in their life. Some people are more bitches about it than others. Some people whine about it more than others. But, this is a demanding sport. It's a professional sport. Their bodies are pushed to limits. And the reason their bodies are pushed to limits is because the fact that we know they all make money. So the powers that be know that they make quite a bit of money, and they push them as well. So, and they push them as well because they know that they're going to make money off of these teams and these players and these games and all this kind of stuff. And it's what coaches complain about. Klopp has talked about it. A lot of coaches have talked about it, that, these games, there's an abundance of games, whether it's international breaks and friendlies and then the Nations Cup and then, these now, tournaments that are supposed to be friendly, but they're not friendly. They're friendlies, but they're now glorified friendlies, and they're representing their country. So these players want to represent their country. They want to play as much as they can. And that all opens up to these guys getting hurt, right? To go back to my point is essentially these players get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles on their legs, on their bodies, and that's what's going to deteriorate. So what happens is, it kind of hurts me because the reason Ancelotti, I don't know for sure that that's the reason Ancelotti put the lineup he did against Atlético Madrid, right? Which is that he decided to go with Kroos and Modric in the midfield. He put Bellingham as a striker, even though we have Joselu, which, I'll get to Joselu in a second, that we have Joselu as the only number 9, that we have, the only out-and-out striker that we truly have. We didn't have Vinicius available, so because he had gastroenteritis or he got sick or whatever. And I'm actually glad he didn't play because, he's coming back from an injury. And I think the one team you don't want to play when you're just coming back from an injury is playing Atlético Madrid in the Metropolitano, because then there's a risk that he's going to get seriously injured, or at least, he's not going to play the full 90 minutes, but even if he comes in for half an hour, you're playing a very high intensity and very high, I would say, emotional game, because it's the crosstown rivalry. It's the Madrid derby. I think there's a higher chance of him re-injuring himself when we're just trying to get him back. And he's so important in this team. So Ancelotti goes out with Camavinga. He goes out with no Tchouaméni, who is a the only out and out center defensive midfielder that we have, aside from Camavinga, but Camavinga's more of a regular CM, more of your box to box midfielder. So your only out and out defensive midfielder is Tchouaméni, who's actually had a solid start to the season. In my opinion, he's had a solid start to the season. And then you have, who else did he play? He played Valverde. So you're playing those guys. So you're essentially playing Valverde. You're playing Camavinga. You're playing Modric as a cam, right? As a number 10 in that number 10 role. You're putting Kroos as your DM, which he's a great player, obviously, and I think Kroos is probably out of the two is the healthier one that I think should start because he is more of your metronome and the guy who keeps the keeps the passes and keeps the game kind of, I think, calms down that midfield and keeps it organized. But playing together, taking away Bellingham, putting Bellingham in that striker role. Basically keeps all of the attention on Bellingham because now he's a striker. Now all they have to do is cover him, and you're leaving Modric to be that sort of surprise guy. But Modric doesn't have the legs, doesn't have the physical size to play that surprise role the way he used to play it. So I think it was just all out of whack in that regard. And then you have Rodrigo, who just hasn't been firing on all cylinders, which I can, totally vouch for that as well. I think, and so, that's just one of the other things. Defensively, we were terrible. Fran Garcia, going down, he's basically, just bombing down that left flank, not coming back to defend. When he does defend, he's not, positionally correct all the time. I really like Fran Garcia. I really think he's a huge asset to the team, but he's still a young guy. He's got a lot of stuff to learn. I do feel like in this case, although Mendy wasn't performing well before, but now he's back from injury, Mendy is going to give you that defensive strength that you would need to, that because right now the whole position of your wing back or your, let's say, your laterales, as you would say, your fullbacks, as you would say in English, the fullbacks, the position now is kind of like it's more attack than it is defense. So if they're too solid defensively, but they don't add anything to attack, you're really kind of isolating your attack. Your wingers kind of end up isolated, and they have no one to sort of back up or do a lot of these overlapping runs. So. And if they can't cross to save their life, like sometimes Mendy obviously is that case where he's not really helping with an attack, you kind of leaving, let's say, a Vinicius up there alone, right? So Fran Garcia can definitely help with that, but what he's not being able to do is really defensively help us out there. At least not yet. But I think he's a solid player, and he's obviously shown that in other games where he's had, he's learning. He's had bad first halves, and then he picks it up in the second and ends up, being a huge asset in the game. Carvajal has been performing really well, but in this case, he was injured. So what happens is we had to put in Lucas Vázquez, which Lucas Vázquez is great. He's your utility player, but in these kind of situations, in these type of games, he's the type of guy you need on the bench, but he is not the guy that you want to rely on ever, in my opinion. And it's just, I've had a love and hate relationship with this guy, but it just always ends up that he gets put in these situations where, the only backup, he is the only backup for Carvajal. And so he gets put in these situations where, he's not the go-to guy, and it ends up screwing us over, They were killing us. They were killing us on the left flank. Samuel Lino going down that left flank was getting past Lucas Vázquez every single time. The two first goals, or the first and the last goal, or no, actually the first and the second goal, and the third goal all came in from the left hand side. But obviously it was a confluence of errors that happened. David Alaba not covering Morata. In two plays, both the first and the third goal, making, a huge mistake. The defense completely shutting down against Griezmann, playing, Griezmann scoring, who is a guy who's what? He's like 5'7". He shouldn't be the guy scoring a header. But that, there, I think Camavinga, there was there was too much of a problem of many guys. So basically what happens in that case is Alaba did try to cover Morata, pulls off a little, sticks with Morata. Nobody sticks with Griezmann, and it should have been in that case. It should have been from what I was looking at, it should have been Camavinga or at least Fran Garcia tracking him. Nobody tracks him. He arrives alone in the box, gets the header, scores the second goal, and we're 2-0 down. We're 2-0 down. So, defensively, we were not good. We don't have Militao. We don't have, the presence of Thibaut Courtois, which I think also calms down our defenders and allows them to perform better. We have Kepa, which is a decent goalkeeper, but he is not Thibaut Courtois, never will be Thibaut Courtois. And I think, everything is, for me, is essentially animico. Everything is something that gives you, when you have the players in their proper positions, when you have the right guys, when you have the guys that are solid in their positions, I think you are able to concentrate more on what your job is, and losing those little things losing those little feelings of security and having to readjust is where mistakes end up happening because you're worried about other things, In this case, and once again, man, I don't like, as much as I feel like Toni Kroos is an absolute killer in the sense of he is the sniper. Yes, he is. His passes are great. Yes, he's like a metronome setting the tempo of the way the game is played. But when he is in that defensive midfield position, you really are isolating his creativity and you are making him do a job that he is not entirely suited for anymore. That's not his position anymore. I mean, that is not a position that he can physically, you're not going to get the best out of Toni Kroos in that position. That's why I don't understand why Carlo Ancelotti didn't play Tchouaméni. And so this is where I go into my other part of the argument is, I really believe that, we got all of this feedback. Essentially, we've heard it in the press that Toni Kroos and Modric weren't happy with their new roles in the starting lineups or in the lineups, essentially, that they aren't starters. They're coming in as essentially now super subs to calm down the game or to help us, get control of a game. And it really bothers me, I think, because as much as I like these two guys and I understand where they're coming from, I think, it comes to a time in a player's life where he has to, and it's not easy, it's easier to said than done, but it comes a time in a player's life where he has to realize he is no longer the young gun and there are new guys coming into the squad and that the squad is changing. And in this case, Modric and Toni Kroos complaining about it, I'm pretty sure it became something that was in the press. And I'm sure Ancelotti, being the man manager he was, acquiesced to those demands and essentially put Toni Kroos and Modric in the team to the detriment of the team. But the thing is, I think that's where it was maybe a good thing because it was something that now they can't back up, their stuff about saying, their complaints about saying, we're not getting the start. We should be being more influential. We should be starting, this kind of stuff. There is this one game that all the fans and Ancelotti and anybody on the team, if they wanted to, can throw back in their face as an argument and say, guys, I'm sorry. I know how you feel. We love you guys. You guys are a very important part of this team, but you are no longer at the same level you once were. So we can't start both of you. Maybe one of you, like I would say, I would rather start Kroos. Even though I'm a Modric fanatic, I would rather start Kroos than start Modric, unless, of course, Modric is going to be in a CM position, and but I put in one of our younger guns that have more that are have better that are more physical, more of a physical presence. Either, let's say, if I'm going to put on Kroos, maybe I won't put on Camavinga, right? So I'll have Kroos in there, and I'll put Valverde on one side, Kroos on the other. Like, let's talking about if we're putting in a diamond. Kroos on one side, Modric on the other. I'm sorry, Kroos on one side, Valverde on the other, Tchouaméni in the middle. Tchouaméni as your DM, and Bellingham as, your cam, your number 10. That is how you would organize your midfield. If I wanted to put in Camavinga, but I wanted to have somebody else that is, add that if I did want to play Modric, then I would put in Camavinga and have Modric on the other side, right? Bellingham and Tchouaméni in their positions, right? That's granted that those are the two positions that we have. God forbid they don't get injured, right? Because I really feel like Tchouaméni, then the only option you really have is either playing Camavinga in that position or Kroos in that position. So Tchouaméni is really your out and out defensive midfielder, but I definitely feel Camavinga is the other one that can play in that position, but you lose a CM. But you can put in Kroos, you can put in Valverde, but just don't put in Modric. Don't put them both on the field at the same time. You guys get what I'm saying. It's not that hard to understand. If you want to play one of them, I would say you have somebody that's creative with the ball, that has all the experience, along with somebody that is an engine, that is essentially like a train of physical, like a physical presence that can run up and down the field, and it gives you speed and pace. So that's either a Valverde or a Camavinga. You don't put two guys that are essentially going to slow down your team at this point, right? Which is a Modric and a Kroos. You need one of them out, one of them in, or if you want to go full, let's go all youth, all crazy like we did at the beginning of the season against Athletic Bilbao. We saw how that could be. They all go out. They're all freaking running on all cylinders. It gets a little chaotic too. So, you need that little bit of experience, in my opinion. So that's where he got it wrong. He acquiesced to their demands, and it screwed up. It screwed up everything. And then you take out, and the other error he did is, Bellingham is that position. He's a tall physical presence coming in as a number 10. He is that guy who can make those late runs into the box, can be that X factor that's coming in late into the box. So essentially, he can be that other factor attacking presence that you can put into the box that can either head the ball in or, drag defenders away, so that Joselu and Rodrigo can be the ones that score. Now, if you put Bellingham in there instead of Joselu, and you put Bellingham as a striker, you are isolating. You are essentially no longer have that physical X factor coming in. You do, let's say, if you're trying, you're trying to with Modric, but he's not that type of player anymore. You're taking that away. You're not giving Bellingham. You're not giving him Bellingham. You're putting him in a position which he is not. That's not what he plays. So he was, and that's easier for these guys, these defenders of Atlético Madrid, which they play. Sometimes their back line is 5 different guys, and it's 5 people in the back line. Easy for them to just say, okay, well, we're just going to focus on Bellingham. We're going to shut down Bellingham. Rodrigo's going to be all by himself, essentially. And, there you go. That's what's going to end up happening. And that is what happened. The midfield there was no attack. Rodrigo, there are many times during the game against Atletico where he was all by himself, running at the entire defense of Atletico Madrid, which is a solid defense, obviously, and just running at them alone with no outlet, no other way of scoring except for taking a shot on goal, which were pot shots in reality. They were pot shots. They were shots that not high percentage shots, not, threatening shots. They were just ways to somehow, hopefully, speculatively try and make a shot on goal and hope there's a mistake or something that happens where somebody else can run in and score. But it was an impossible task because there was nobody else in the box. So it was just like a bunch of different errors happening. And we could all see that it wasn't going to work out, and Ancelotti knew as much that it didn't work out because he made all the changes in the second half that he did. He basically, let everybody know that they were performing like crap in the second half because he put Nacho in. He took out Fran Garcia. He took out Modric. He took out Lucas Vazquez, you know? And if that's not letting them know, hey, man, you guys aren't performing, I don't know what is, you know? He took them all out. And he put in who he should have put in from the get-go. But by then, we were already 3-1 down. And the miracle of making a comeback and all that wasn't going to happen in a Metropolitano that was now hyped up. The entire team was hyped up. They were already killing us on the flanks. The defense was already shot. You know, like they weren't having their best game. It's like you gotta start with your best players, man. You know, and I think it's just the error in this was Ancelotti, and he admitted to it. Ancelotti basically caving in to the demands of his two veterans, you know, complaining about not getting the respect they felt they deserved. But I'm sorry, man, you got, as a coach, even though you want to be a man manager, you gotta have to try to sit and explain, listen, there are reasons why I'm doing the thing, because at the end of the day, we need to win. And you're still going to play, you're just not going to start, you know? Those guys are still very valuable for other reasons. You could still put in a Modric, you could still put in a Kroos when you need that. You need to slow down the game. You need that creativity. You need that stability in the midfield, that possession to hold the ball, you know. But that's essentially what happened. But then what pisses me off the most, honestly, is everyone just piles on to this is the habit we've gotten in as Madridistas, is that everybody is piling on Ancelotti, piling on this guy who, if we look back to what's happened all summer and what's happened over the years since the likes of Cristiano and Bale and now Benzema and all our guys, all our, you know, star attackers have gone, is that the board has been entirely focused on bringing in one freaking guy from PSG that we all know his name, focused on bringing in one guy at the detriment of the entire team. Because you're so focused on bringing in that one guy that you feel is going to make a difference, and he will make a difference. But he's a diva, man, you know? But you're so focused on bringing him in that the rest of the project, you don't care about the rest of the project falling apart. You know, I understand that you have to look ahead. You have to kind of finagle your way into making sure that you really want to get your guy. You got to be patient. You got to play the long game. You got to do certain things. But the one thing you don't want to do is, you know, make the team look, you know, also, you know, humiliate, or just make I don't know. I would say, you know, Real Madrid is that type of team that can't, it's not, you know, they have to win at least one trophy, because it's not enough. They have to win everything, you know, even though it's not possible, obviously, to win everything all the time, but they have to compete. They have to be competitive. The fan base needs to see them being competitive. You have to at least try. So if you don't fill the gaps, okay, I understand. You got to Benzema left. You got to Joselu. You try for somebody else. Get somebody that's not as expensive, obviously, as an Mbappe. You know, you can go for a Vlahovic. You could have gone for a Harry Kane if you knew that Mbappe wasn't going to be around that long. You know, Mbappe wasn't going to come, or an Osimhen or something like that. But you could try somebody else instead of being so fixated on this other guy, and actually save some money and maybe bring in some other guys that at the end of the day are going to make the end product, the product as a whole, better. You know, I would say, like, if you can fill in the positions and have a deeper squad with quality players, with all the money you're going to spend on one guy. As much as you want that one guy, because, you know, of everything that comes with him, this whole like Galactico sort of feeling of him being there, you know. But it's just the focus on him. It has been a detriment to, and it's put Ancelotti in the position that he is currently in right now. You know, he has to make do with what he has. And he's going to make, if he makes tactical mistakes like he did the other day by trying to cater to these veterans that are complaining about them feeling that they're not getting the respect they deserve, well, that's going to happen, you know? Things like this are going to happen. But once again, it's you know, the whole situation there also is the fact that the board has really handicapped the team because we don't have an out-and-out number 9. We don't have an attack. And then when things happen, like Vinicius gets injured, really the only thing that you have is Rodrigo, Brahim, and Joselu are your only 3 options in attack. And no disrespect, because I really like Joselu. I like Joselu, and I think, you know, I was happy he scored today against Las Palmas. He has this desire to keep on going. You know, you could see he was visibly frustrated because he wasn't able to score. Because, you know, one was that he kept on shooting right at the goalkeeper, but the goalkeeper was also having had a good game. You know. So the goalkeeper's obviously his morale increases and Joselu's drops. But Joselu kept trying, man. And when he heads the ball, he's scoring those goals. And I keep on saying, man, if this guy could score 15 goals with Espanyol that got relegated, if he could be the guy on an Espanyol team, a relegation-bound Espanyol, and was still able to score 15 goals for them, we can make use of that guy if we give him the correct service. But then if you take him out of the game when he's been playing pretty decently and he's been scoring, coming on as a substitute and scoring for the national team, then don't take him out. Don't take him out when that's who we need the most, because we don't have a number 9. Because the board couldn't be bothered to get another higher class number 9 than Joselu. So ultimately, I don't feel it is the blame cannot be put squarely on Ancelotti, like we constantly want to do. The blame has to be on the fact that the team is incomplete. It's great in the midfield. Defensively, you know, we all know we need another right back. The left back situation, you know, Fran Garcia is still very green. He is somebody that is showing, you know, talent. Mendy hopefully gets back to, you know, his previous form. At least, you know, to have him there as an option. Militao is injured. Thibaut Courtois is injured. That obviously causes an issue in the defensive, you know, in the defensive stability and the morale and now David Alaba is out for the game against Girona, which is a game that, you know, we want to win, because essentially if we win it, we'll be top of the table again. And, you know, obviously we don't want to drop points again, but now we have him out. Thankfully, Vinicius is going to be back. But we have, you know, midfield players. We have, you know, a bunch of great, solid midfield players that can do great things. But we need to, you know, Vinicius and Rodrigo being back is going to make a difference. I'm sorry, Vinicius and being back is going to make a difference. And then the other thing is, man, I hate people that, you know, consistently rag on Rodrigo when Rodrigo is in the position. You know, you're putting him alone, essentially, with Bellingham there. With Bellingham at the top, Rodrigo was essentially alone. He was the only attacking outlet that you really had in the entire game. So for people to get mad that he's not scoring left and right, you know, is crazy to me. Rodrigo excelled last season when he was playing with Benzema. It was Rodrigo, Benzema, and Vinicius. He was really starting to come into his own, even though we all know that that's, you know, he's more of, you know, naturally he's more of a left winger than he is a right winger, but he's playing as a right winger and he's doing a pretty damn good job of it when he had Benzema there. But now that he's not playing in a 4-3-3 and he's playing in this diamond, 4-4-2 diamond, the two guys are struggling. Both Vinicius and Rodrigo have been struggling to sort of find their way in this new system. But now you take Vinicius out of the situation. You don't have Joselu, so you don't have a second striker, really. You have Bellingham, who's obviously going to do, his more normal duties, right? He's going to fall into a trap of doing his more normal duties. And because he's been performing well, the defenders are going to be going after him. You're really going to have only one outlet, which is Rodrigo. And you're asking a young guy to be a world-class player all of a sudden. Because, yeah, he is a world-class player. He is a world-class player, but to all of a sudden, pick up the mantle, and it's just an unfair ask for these guys to pick up the mantle of Benzema, pick up the mantle of Cristiano, pick up the mantle of all the guys that came before them when the board hamstringed the team by having enough time to come up with another solid striker besides bringing in Joselu as a backup striker, had enough time to bring in somebody else when they knew Mbappe wasn't coming. So to me, it's just that the whole management of Real Madrid has been wrong in the way they've been running the things because they've been concentrated only on this one guy. And it's just something that I'm not going to continue talking about because it's over and over and over. We all know what the problem is. And then what happens is things go bad, and then the Spanish press, which I'm pretty sure also Madrid is, has a hand in it. Then, the Madrid press will start have scapegoating people, whether it's Fran Garcia, whether it's now Luka Modric, going after guys or falling all on the head of Ancelotti. And Ancelotti, because he's a fucking decent man, will shoulder the blame for it. He will say, it was my fault. I lined these guys up and I shouldn't have lined them up. But I honestly feel like, based on what we saw today, he rested Jude Bellingham. Today, when we saw him play against Las Palmas, he rested Jude Bellingham. He put in Brahim. Brahim scored a goal. Joselu scored a goal. Who, he wasn't there didn't come on until the second half against Atlético Madrid. Tchouaméni was back in his position that he needed to be in. Like, the guys that needed to be where they needed to be played today, and it was a good game today with Las Palmas for these guys. Like, yeah, they didn't blow them out of the water, but I think that was by design. They didn't want to blow Las Palmas out of the water, even though they could have. They took a lot of shots on goal. Joselu had a lot of chances. Once they went 2 up, and they also saw that, Las Palmas wasn't really offering anything in attack that was going to be a danger or a threat. The idea was to sort of recover that semblance of, I would say, stability in the squad, and the guys to once again kind of recover from that, from the beating they took from Atlético Madrid this weekend. Recover, get their air back, get, their confidence back, get the win, and we're happy with it, because there was no real way. There was no real time except for maybe one chance that they had where they were able to, maybe get one back. Las Palmas was able to get one back. There was only one time where they were close to doing that. And then the rest of the time was really Real Madrid dominating, circulating the ball, having a lot of chances to shoot, and really just getting comfortable again. And that's what we wanted to see. That's the recovery we needed to see. That's the recovery we wanted to see. Now, unfortunately, though, we're probably without David Alaba. Rudiger also picked up a knock, but it seems like it's not going to be that big of a deal. So we'll see how it's going to happen against Girona, which is a team that I feel we can beat, obviously. I don't see Girona being a team that's going to be able to sustain this type of performance. A lot of teams at the beginning do very well, and then they start fading as the season goes on. But I really feel like Girona's not going to be able to sustain that type of performance, and I feel like Real Madrid can come in as their first really true stiff test and knock them back down a peg, and we can regain that confidence once again. So that's just really my thoughts on what's been going on with Real Madrid. I think, I still have confidence in these guys. I feel like if Ancelotti plays his cards correctly, the injuries, obviously, now Arda Güler is also gone for another 3 weeks, but, he's still a young guy too. So I don't think he's going to come in and be like, he's going to be a world beater and change everything right away. But we definitely need Bellingham firing on all cylinders. We need Tchouaméni in his position. We need, I would put Kroos in the team alongside with like a Valverde. Put Rodrigo and Vinicius up top, and I think we're golden. Camavinga, maybe put him as a left back. Even though I know he doesn't like to play that, but in this case, since we don't have David Alaba, you put Nacho, you put. Actually, you're probably going to have to put Nacho in as no, Carvajal should be back, right? So I think we have an opportunity to maybe rest Camavinga in this one and have him come in at the second half. So there's different things. Midfield, we have kind of an embarrassment of riches like in that way. But I think this is really going to – I think it's too early to scream bloody murder is essentially what I'm saying. But it was something that needed to happen because now, like I said – Ancelotti can and should use this because of the fact that Modric and Kroos were complaining about them, wanting that time or whatever, and not liking, their current roles on the team. Ancelotti already gave them that opportunity. He already placed it for them. He gave it, he gave them their both starting and said, "Hey guys, listen, see, this is what happened the last time that I listened to you guys. I tried to play you guys together and see how it would go. It didn't go well. I'm not going to run that risk again." And he can use it as a basis to say, that's not going to happen again. I have to do what's best for the team. And you guys have to understand that it's not personal. I'm doing what's best for the team. Because as much as I love Luka Modric and as much as I love Toni Kroos is still a younger guy. He's 33 years old. But Luka Modric is 38. I love the guy. I love him. He's my favorite player. But he doesn't belong starting a game like the one against Atlético Madrid. He does not belong in that starting lineup. Start them together if you're going to play Las Palmas, Obviously, they weren't going to do it today because of the debacle from the weekend. But Las Palmas or a team, an Almeria, a team that's at the like bottom half of the table, then you can play around when you need to rotate, and then you can do that. And it sucks because it's a legend that I'm talking about, and it's a guy that I feel is legend. But the time runs out, and you got to look into the future, and you got to do what's best for the team, Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts for this edition of the podcast. I thank you guys, as always, for listening to the podcast, for listening to us here at Y Nada Más Podcast. My name, of course, is Eric Rivera. I am the host of the podcast. And, of course, you can also subscribe to the video version of our podcast on YouTube. And I really ask you guys to please help us out with that. It's a huge help to us when you do that. So please, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on any of the wherever you listen to your podcasts, and also check us out on all the social media channels at YNM Podcast on Instagram, at Y Nada Más Podcast on Facebook, at Y Nada Más Podcast on X or /Twitter, at inadamas.net on the web, and you can always contact us at info@inadamas.net. We're also on Threads, but I still haven't I'm not doing as much on that yet, but that's things that are growing there. I don't do TikTok. I just don't have the time. So that's it. That's everything I have for right now, guys. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Hala Madrid, let's hope and get this win against Girona on the weekend. And then next week we face off with Napoli. And let's just, we got to shake off this terrible loss, obviously, to Atlético Madrid, our crosstown rivals and hated rivals. But we'll be back. We'll be back, guys. We'll be back. So once again, thank you guys very much for listening. And Hala Madrid.